comics?
Because they have no balls.
And now, coming to you digitally from cyberspace, it's the Mike and Joe After Show.
Wow, you've really put some zip into that today.
Yeah.
It's the after show.
You could say I put some thwip into
it. gotta get the little clank, the mechanical clank laugh in there. David Kay is an amazing voice actor. That I believe that's the name of the actor that plays Clank, and obviously James Arnold Taylor does Ratchet, and they both. One thing that was cool, we didn't really get to discuss it during the review, but one thing that was cool was Clank's characterization more than anybody else. The way he looked, the way he sounded, it all seemed like spot on to me within the comic book. So I think so. I was hearing his voice, the sort of like Ratchet. I am not certain if this is a wise course of action. You know that kind of you know, as they were talking. Ratchet's voice, I didn't hear James Arnold Taylor, and I don't know if that's because they didn't have the humor in there or what it was, but there was just something missing. It's funny because I'm gonna stand by my rating, but I also 100% get why you gave it a 2, because it really just within, especially viewing it within the framework of like Ratchet and Clank the series. It doesn't really add anything, especially because it's a story where it's like character starts at point A, goes to point B and C, ends up back at point A. And then that's just not very satisfying, you know?
Yeah, it just seems to me like an old script that never got made into anything, got into the hands of somebody who could draw it and make it into a comic book presentation, and that's sort of what happened to it.
Well, and this could have been like a DLC for a video game, or something.
Too.
Like it would have been like a small bite-sized adventure, you know.
And I don't mean to hate on it, and I hate being super critical of things like that, but at the same time, I guess certain expectations, you know, the games are all so good and entertaining, and you know there's so many good comics out there. It just felt like this just didn't deliver. Not that it was garbage, like I said, you know, it's not bad. It's not like I hated it and I hate this, you know.
Right? No, I totally agree. It's one of those like I've got $100 to drop on a trade paperback. Am I gonna buy Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus, or am I gonna buy a 6-issue? You know, I mean, it's the asking price because it's out of print is really high too. So I mean that too is a barrier where it's like this needs to be really phenomenal to justify hunting it down that way. And I think most people would, you know, go for it digitally. You can probably find it on Comixology, but
that's probably why it's out of print.
Yeah, I looked in the because DC owns Wildstorm. I looked in the DC Universe Infinite app to see if I could find it there, but it's not there. So, but their track record with adding Wildstorm stuff to that is a little bit spotty. So, I think they've covered most of the 90s, but I don't know if they're just kind of moving chronologically from the start of it up until now, or how they're planning on doing that. But yeah, it's really not easy to find. So I guess we're basically telling people like don't
don't
if it's gonna be a lot of effort for you to find it, don't bother, because it's not that essential to the series. That said, like it was fun. I mean, I didn't hate it. That's the thing. That's why I didn't want to give it a 2, because I was just like, oh, is this like as bad? Like 2s that I gave out were like, I think I gave a 2.5 to Next Generation Hive. And that to me was like a very clear example of like, you had a story, you didn't cook it all the way, you know, you took it out of the oven too soon. I don't cook, so I don't know why I'm using cooking metaphors, but yeah. And you just sort of like churned it out as quickly as possible. And it felt very like workmanlike, which I guess is consistent with kind of how a lot of Enterprise episodes are too, which are mostly Braga. So it felt like this was like we just did this to do it. Whereas this felt more like the people involved were passionate about it and they wanted to do it. They just somehow fell short of the mark. And I would be fascinated to read an interview with Fixman about like what he thinks of this series or like why they made some of the story decisions they did, because yeah, I don't know. I think that would be interesting. There's probably nothing online about it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't find anything for that, but I wonder why they decided to do like sort of this one-off little story rather than
Mm-hmm.
do something like completely character driven with
Yeah.
Ratchet. Maybe he gets a hint of the Lombaxes, or something that is very interesting that you're like, wow, we've never done this in a game before. It's completely different. Maybe we'll see something, and maybe it doesn't result in anything that's game changing, pun intended, but at least there's the chance that it could be. But this really just seemed like the formula for a game, just sort
Well, do
of
you think
drawn up.
this occurred to me while you were talking just now, something you hit on. Do you think they were hamstrung by it having to fit within the game's canon? Do you think that made it where they really couldn't change a whole lot? Because if you're following a video game series over several years, I don't know that you can necessarily count on your fan base going out and picking up a comic book. So then do you get into like the Kingdom Hearts problem of like, well, have you not consumed every piece of narrative that's ever been published on this? No. Well, then you won't be able to follow the story at all.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
you can't have too much canon, especially in
Yeah.
different places, but at the same time, if you don't have enough, then it's like we have so many different versions of the same thing that aren't canon, that what's real and what isn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think for this, like I said, like if this was like more character focused or something,
Mm-hmm.
they could have easily, I think, fit it within the lore, but not necessarily make it required reading for canon. Like maybe it gives some more depth to Ratchet's character or Clank or something
Yeah,
that
Ratchet just didn't have. Did he really have that much to do in this? Even?
it didn't really seem like it.
I mean,
Like
not really. Yeah.
did like I think I blocked him out of my mind, as I was reading the story, because he really didn't seem like Ratchet, and there wasn't a whole lot of
He was just
Ratchetness to
missing
him.
that. I mean, even the first game, you've got those memorable parts where he's just sort of, he is a cartoon character, but he's kind of reacting to the ludicrousness of the things happening around him. Where he meets the plumber, and he goes, "Oh, plumber's crack," and then the
Makes a
guy turns
crack
around and
about
he's
him.
like, "What? Oh, I said the plumber's back," and that, and the guy trying to sell him the rhino, and he's like, "Come again?" Like
Rip you a new one?
he's
What'd you say to me?
yeah. So
Well,
the
did you
I,
know, before you go on with that
oh
statement,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, go
did you
ahead.
know, and you probably do, you just don't remember, but since 2003, James Arnold Taylor has voiced Ratchet, but in the original game in 2002 on the PS2, actually somebody by the name of Mikey Kelly did the voice for Ratchet.
I did not know that. I thought it was James Arnold Taylor the whole way.
No, there was a different voice actor in the very first game, and I just like when I read that, I sort of remembered it because I was like, yeah, he did sound like a little bit. I think it's one of those where they sound similar to where if you're
Yeah.
not paying attention, you don't really, get it. And that was 2002, so that was 20 years
Wow.
ago. But yeah, so I thought that was an interesting bit
I
of
will
trivia.
say it feels like James Arnold Taylor has a better grasp of what's happening in the scene in the Ratchet and Clank games than he did maybe in Final Fantasy X, because yeah, well, it's just funny because they talk about, I've seen interviews with him where he talks about like there were all these like sort of story beats that he's like, oh, this resonates with me personally, and stuff like that in Final Fantasy X. But he's like, we read all the scenes out of order, so he wasn't clear on sort of like the character's arc throughout the game. And he's
Mm,
like, there's a lot of stuff I would have played differently had I known,
right.
which I think is interesting, because I don't know why you would shoot things out of sequence in a video game. I get why you do it on TV, It's like we gotta be on this set. Today is the day we're on this set. We're knocking out all the scenes that happen here, and then we're on to the next thing. But in a video game, I don't know why you don't just go through it chronologically.
Right.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Don't know on that front, but to what you were saying earlier about this being like a certain type of story being canon or part of a game or something like that, like it, yeah, I don't know if this was a script that never got made into a game, or but there were a couple things. Issues 2, what was it? 2, 5, and 6 were Friends with Benefits, Multiple Organisms, and Bros Before Foes were all original titles for Ratchet and Clank All for One. I think it's really good that they did not use any of those titles, especially when you string them together in one sentence. They sound, yeah. So All for One, I think, is a better video game title. But
oh my gosh!
So that makes me think that maybe this was either an abandoned idea or script or something that they just took and were like, "Hey, let's use this for a comic book," instead of developing something, either character driven or just a side adventure that's different from the games. And so I don't know if they made it that way just to attract the game players or what it was, but
I don't know. That's interesting. That almost makes me wonder if it's one of those rigid. You know how like early season DS9, like they would be doing like a weird sci-fi concept that like didn't fit the show, and like half of those scripts were just like, oh, this was a next generation script that was rejected, that we'll just throw it onto the DS9 characters, basically. And did it kind of have that? I wonder if it was kind of that thing where it was like maybe this was a pitch that he didn't get approved at Insomniac or whatever, and so maybe it was like, well, you can just make a comic book, or something like that. It did kind of have that feeling, because it just feels entirely supplemental. It's not, there's nothing that happens in this story that I'm like, you need to understand this to sort of move the characters forward or understand where it goes. Moving on. What you said about Captain Quark was interesting too. Sorry, go ahead. I want to come back to that though.
Well, you're like, moving on. I was like, well,
yeah, no. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But
go ahead.
Well, and it's, why did they make this comic in the first place? Like, was T.J. Fixman forced into writing this and he really didn't want to do it, so he just used this existing story because it was a box to check, or was it something that he was actually passionate about and wanted to do? I don't know. I don't have that information, but I would be interested to learn more about that.
It doesn't feel to me like Star Trek Next Generation Hive very much felt like, to me, I'm ticking a box and I'm cashing a paycheck. This, I don't know. This didn't quite have that feel to me. It felt like they cared about what they were doing. I just don't know. I don't know. It's so puzzling to me that it's the same writer as the video games. Because if you had not told me that, I would have almost guaranteed that, oh, we brought somebody outside in that is an experienced comic book writer, but maybe they don't know the characters as well. That's what I would have thought had you not told me otherwise.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's just a case of, the writer who knows the characters, who wants to make this, is just not, used to writing comic books, and at the point that this came out, and it just didn't translate well. I don't know.
It wasn't badly paced necessarily, though. There are some writers out there that will, it's like, you should be writing novels. Like I always take so much crap for saying this, and I don't, whatever. Come at me, internet. But Marv Wolfman, great writer, great at writing character moments. Always describes to you what's happening in the scene you're looking at, though, and it drives me nuts. In comic books, it is all about show, don't tell. So if there's something, if the image needs to be interpreted by the narrator for you to understand it, then the artist is not doing their job. In my opinion, that's obviously you can think differently about that if you want to, but I think what is unique to that genre is you don't need to overwrite it. You don't need to over describe what's happening because you can see it. So you really, the writer needs to be there to set up the narrative. They need to be there to provide the dialogue and the character moments and all of those things. But I don't want you to describe to me what's happening in the picture that I'm looking at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that wasn't something that he did, because that's a really common, at least to me, something when you take somebody that's like not a quote unquote writer and you maybe bring them into the comic books world, or they're not a comic book writer. That's something that a lot of people fall into. Marv Wolfman is a comic book writer, so I don't know why he does that. I think he's just wordy. That's just how he writes. But yeah, so it didn't have the feeling that it was like amateurish either. So it's so, honestly, it is fascinating as a comic book. Like, I'm glad we read it, because it's like it somehow went wrong, but I can't figure out why. Like, it seems like all the pieces are there that it should have been successful.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there were a lot of people who out there who probably did like it, but I think the majority probably didn't, since it's out of print, and that's probably
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, there's nobody asking for like can we get a nice reprint of Ratchet and Clank from 2012?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And that's kind of unfortunate, because it could have been a really neat series, but at the same time, like, there's been so many games that you don't want to exhaust every thought and idea by trying to have a comic series and a game series at the same time, or, like you mentioned earlier, just have so much canon that, like, oh, I haven't read the first 3 volumes of 12 issues of Ratchet and Clank, so this
Right.
next game that came out, I'm just completely lost as to, who is this pink Lombax, and why is the whole race there, and why is Ratchet waking up in Lombax headquarters, and like, you wouldn't want that to happen. Like, what did I miss?
You start the new game and it's just like he's on the home world already, and
Yeah.
Or even worse, like he's been there and left, and he's like, I've rejected my people or something, and you're just like, what happened?
I killed them all, and he's got like an eye patch or something.
Wow, this goes really dark. so you reminded me of something else I found in my research, which was very interesting, was that after Deadlocked, the Insomniac developers were basically like the writers, the developers, all the people involved in the series. Apparently they got series fatigue with it, and they were like, we think Deadlocked needs to just be the end. We're gonna stop. They released, I mean, believe it or not, they released Ratchet and Clank, Going Commando, Up Your Arsenal, and Deadlocked all a year apart from each other.
Yeah.
So they cranked those out.
And clanked them out.
They clanked them out. Yeah, exactly. And I guess they were at the point where they're like, we're kind of done with these characters. Like, it kind of happened with Spyro, although with Spyro, there was also the thing of like, well, Universal Interactive owns our character, and we don't want to continue basically making this product that we don't have creative control over. So that was why they were like, let's just sell the rights off to Universal and go on to something new. That's why Ratchet and Clank came about. But it's interesting. I guess it was like internal pressure from Sony that made them even make Tools of Destruction in the first place. Because Sony was like, look, we've got our new console coming out. You're kind of like you've kind of become our mascot character. We need to have a Ratchet and Clank game. And so it was, I wonder if that's why that period is not as memorable for me. Because I remember the quest for booty. It was, I'm sorry, guys, this is the name of the games.
Treasure.
Treasure. Yeah. I mean, it was pirate themed. It's pirates have to, chase that booty. I'm sorry.
Yo, mama.
But I remember that because it was like this bite-sized downloadable thing that was a pretty quick game. But A Crack in Time and Tools of Destruction, like, I barely remember playing those at all.
I don't remember Full Frontal Assault.
Yeah, I don't think, did we play that one?
I don't think
we played that one.
But I think you mentioned in the episode too that, like, for us, we didn't really get into PS3 because most of the games that we wanted to play were actually coming out on Xbox and they were
Yeah.
exclusive at the time. So we actually missed a whole like era of PS3 games because we were focused on the Xbox. So I think that had a lot to do with it too, whereas our attention was kind of off of it and we weren't really
Yeah.
thinking about Ratchet and Clank at that point.
Yeah, that's probably part of it too. Because I know I feel like we beat them on rentals or something like that. Back when, oh man, that was like a
Rentals, oh
different
man.
time when games could be rented. Go to your Blockbuster and rent Tools of Destruction, everybody. Um, but I feel like we just had them. Like maybe I went up to Rockford for like a week and we rented one or something and played through it all the way because I feel like that's how I experienced them because I don't think I ever owned any of those games. And I remember the multiplayer one, All for One, and I remember that it kind of sucked, but I don't remember why.
Well, that was also when 3D started getting really big, and so I got the official like Sony PlayStation
Oh,
3D TV so
that's
that we could play that one
right.
in 3D. And it
And
was
it was tiny, right? It was like 19 inches.
yeah, it was widescreen, but it was like really small, and you had to wear these glasses that made it look a little bit darker. And I think it was kind of a weird game as well. So it was like all those things together. It was just
It
like
was. I feel like there was like side scrolling platforming in it or something like that, and but you could move your target around to shoot stuff. I remember like you could play as Dr. Nefarious, Captain Quark, Ratchet. I There had to have been other like a fourth character in there, but I don't know who it was. I mean, maybe it was
yeah,
Clank. Um,
probably.
but yeah, I just remember playing it and being like, what I this is not all that I had hoped for, you know. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though. Sony applying pressure to them to keep making these games. I do think that we got some really good games out of it, but the one that I really remember from the PS3 is Into the Nexus. And that was like a
Yeah.
budget title, but that one I just remember like the graphics, the overall presentation was much more like, oh, I'm watching an animated movie than they had ever been able to pull off before. And they definitely continued that with Rift Apart.
You know, it's funny looking at the game list sort of all at once, like in a bullet list in my notes here. I'm realizing how really all of the titles are kind of inappropriate except for
Yeah.
like Into the Nexus and but so you have Going Commando, you have Up Your Arsenal,
Yeah.
Deadlocked, not so much.
Yeah.
Size Matters,
Yeah. Yeah.
Tools of Destruction, yeah. Quest for Booty, which we giggled at earlier, Crack in Time,
Uh-huh.
All for One, which ended up being a good title, but you know it could have gone drastically different. And then 2012, Full
the fr-
Frontal
what
Assault.
was it? Friends with Benefits? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really good they didn't go with that.
yeah. Friends with Benefits, Multiple Organisms, and Bros Before Foes.
Oh man.
That would have been funny though. Like
That
instead
would have
of
been yeah,
Super
that would have been
Smash
funny.
Brothers, it's Bros Before Foes.
That is pretty funny actually. Oh, and Full Frontal Assault. I don't even know what that game is. Is it a traditional Ratchet and Clank game?
I don't even remember.
I don't even think I knew that existed.
So in 2011, you have All for One, 2012, Full Frontal Assault, and then 2013, Into the Nexus. I remember Into the Nexus and All for One, but I just
Yeah, I
don't
don't remember
know.
Full Frontal Assault at all. I don't think we played that one.
Well, we'll have to go back and see if we can find it.
Was it PS3?
Yeah,
Probably. I don't know if there's like a remaster that you can download on a newer system, but yeah, maybe.
probably not.
Um,
Interesting to see.
yeah, for sure. The new game was really good though. I mean,
It was.
I would definitely recommend anybody that has a PS5 go get it. It's worth it. Although I would maybe wait for a price drop because it was very short as far as like it had a good amount of content. It had more than Into the Nexus, but it still felt like at the end of the day, I was like, so I only went to like 10 planets and the game is over. Like, all right,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and
it
the trophies and the platinum associated with it too, like
so easy. Yeah,
super easy. And this is coming from me, which I usually like to play on easy mode just so I can experience the story and not always get the hassle of the games. But I played this on normal, and it was really easy on normal. And the platinum was like no sweat. So even if you're like a
yeah,
casual gamer, I mean, it is a shoot 'em up sort of platformer, so it does require some kind of skill, but not being a
yeah. But even
hardcore
then, it was
platformer,
really
it was pretty
yeah,
easy.
yeah. It was really like forgiving of mistakes and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It was a fun game though.
But it was
I
fun.
think the Rivet as a character that they added in there was more memorable than any of the other female characters that they've tried to add in before, because I didn't really remember much about Talwyn. I don't know why she didn't make an impression on me, but I was just like, oh, so she was a love interest or something, I guess.
Well,
In a
do you remember what was it, Angel Cross or whatever? She was another love interest that I
no,
didn't even remember until I was like researching.
is
Um,
that some? Oh, was there somebody on like the PS2? Was she in the PS2 games? I might. I mean, that sounds like
Angela Cross.
vaguely.
I'm sorry. She's a Lombax. She was the unknown thief. Let's see, Going Commando.
Yeah, that I was gonna say that sounds like vaguely familiar, but yeah, that's going back a long time. I mean, we talk about these games have been around for like 20 years now. That's
I
insane.
know. I didn't
Because
like
I
really
think of
realize it
this as like
until
a modern platformer franchise,
well,
but
because
it's
every time it comes out, it is like
yeah,
you
that's
know it
true.
it comes out first on the system and then it's the last to go. So it's usually looks really good and is very fluid and has like a whole array of brand new weapons that are crazy and weird. And it's like, how did they
Yeah,
even come up with these? And it
agreed.
just
I like that. What was it called? Like the topiary gun
sprinkler.
or the topiary sprinkler? Yeah, that was
Yeah, it's like
awesome.
a lawn sprinkler, like the old school where it's like and it sprays uh kind of in a stream, but it goes across the yard. But when it hits something with the
You're
water,
getting really quiet. Oh, there you go.
when it sprays in a stream across the yard, but when it sprays something with water, it turns it into basically like a tree that's covered in leaves, and so the enemy can't move. It's a lot of fun, and they take extra damage too. It's a good
Yeah,
one.
they do. Yeah, and those little like fungus dudes that run around shooting too. There's always something weird like that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I just yeah. The games are so kooky and fun, and the comic was just missing that fun, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
I
a shame.
I do have some interview notes from TJ Fixman, and I apologize I don't have the source written down here,
Oh no, that's
but
fine. I'd be very interested in that.
just kind of general Ratchet and Clank lore. So the first question that they hit him with is, "Do you know what happened to Ratchet's mother?" And he actually says, "Yes, I know what happened to her, but I never got a chance to tell those stories, so I have to keep it a secret in case Insomniac or whoever decides to tackle that plot." So I think just
Wow.
having written so many scripts for these games, he's either got some sort of idea or has written maybe even a part of something of questions we don't have answers to. And now that he seems to be off the series, we either may never know those things or just may not get his version of them. So that would be interesting to see in a comic is, this is not canon, but this is sort of my take on where I thought this would go. I would like to see something like that.
Yeah, that would definitely be good. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be something I would be like willing to check out at least in digital or something like that.
Yeah. We talked a little bit before about if Ratchet will ever find the Lombaxes, and it's TJ Fixman who's kind of like, it's that carrot dangling that he's always after. And if he gets that, it might kind of change who he is. But he does say that he has an outline in his head for Ratchet's return to the Lombaxes, But again, who knows who will write it or what version will become canon.
Sure.
An interesting question that I guess I never really I knew the answer to, but I never really thought of it was, are there humans in the Ratchet and Clank universe? And
Oh.
he says in his mind, no, there are no humans. That's something that they discussed in 2007, but again, could always change because the future's sort of up.
Well, is Captain Quark a human though?
He has 3 fingers.
Oh, that's true.
Or 3 thumbs?
No, he has 3 fingers. Yeah, you're right. I never realized that meant he. I don't know. He literally. I just was like, oh, it's Phil Hartman in a superhero suit. It never occurred to me that he was not human, but that is a very good point. Humans have more fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So the last 2 questions in the interview are both related and very interesting that I don't remember if I actually picked up on, or if I did, I just didn't remember. The first question is, Ratchet is actually not his true name. And TJ says, I know Ratchet's Lombax name, but I took it out of A Crack in Time because we want to call him Ratchet. It's a part of who he is. So he actually did have it in the script to reveal Ratchet's true Lombax name.
Wow.
But decided not to go with it. And then the second question was that Percival Tachyon claims he knows Ratchet's real name in Tools of Destruction. And that was another when he planned on revealing it in A Crack in Time, he had sort of wrote that line in there, but they realized again Ratchet's part of his identity, so they decided not to go with it.
I think you can steer that kind of like we were talking, we almost made a story outline for him meeting the Lombaxes in our episode. I feel like we kind of we're it could go like this or it could go like that, but
well, if you take our ideas, we would like some compensation. Yeah. If you go to our WordPress site, there's a link where you can donate to our podcast.
Once you're done, and if you donate enough money, we'll write a 500-page fanfic about Ratchet and Clank and how they finally meet the Lombaxes and he finds the love of his life, and I don't know. Well, I was just gonna say you could still have him. You could even more have that moment where he meets them and maybe it doesn't go how he planned it for some reason. And maybe he finds out his real name, but then he chooses Ratchet as no, Ratchet is who I am. I'm not Anung Unrama or whatever. That's Hellboy's true name. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, or
you know what I mean?
Yeah, my true place in the galaxy. I'm glad I saved you guys and you're back in the universe with us, but my place is, as defender of the universe. Maybe the Lombaxes they're all research people and they're not really good at fighting, and so he has to be their defender. There's
they're
so
all
many
hobbits.
Yeah,
they all just sit around.
Second breakfast. Does he not know about second breakfast? So it seems like from our perspective there's a lot of possibilities, but we're not writers, so
yeah, that's true.
Take that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, I was hoping you had more interview stuff with
no, that was pretty well.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, what I do know is this has been another after show. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a lot of fun, and we will get you next time.
Catch you next time, guys. Peace.
All right. Peace out. Comics?
Because they have no